Welcome to a Legendarium special about a brief and delicious history of pizza. In this episode, we will talk about pizza's rise from a Neapolitan street food favored by the poor into a world-conquering fast food. Pizza may be the world's favorite fast food. People eat it at home, in restaurants, and on street corners. About 3 billion pizzas are sold each year in the United States alone, an average of 46 slices per person. Ingredients in the United States include beet pesto with goat cheese, caramelized onions, apples, rhubarb, grilled honey chicken, red peanut curry, and spinach. In Russia, the makba is a popular pizza topped with sardines, tuna, mackerel, salmon, and red herring. Brazilians eat pizza topped with quail eggs, green peas, carrots, beetroot, and raisins. India uses pickled ginger, paneer, and minced mutton. Japanese diners favor pizza topped with mackerel fillet and squid ink, which turns the cheese black. Yet the story of how humble pizza came to rule the world reveals much about the history of migration, economics, and technology. As far back as antiquity, pieces of flatbread topped with savories served as a simple and tasty meal for those who could not afford plates or silverware, which included most of the population. These early pizzas appear in Virgil's epic poem, The Aeneid, a saga of how Trojan warriors fled their vanquished homeland to found Rome. Shortly after arriving in Italy, Aeneas and his crew sit beneath a tree and lay out thin wheat cakes as platters for their meal. They then scatter the wheaten cakes with mushrooms and herbs they found in the woods and guzzle them down, even the crust. This prompted Aeneas's son Ascanius to exclaim, "Look, we've eaten our plates!" Yet it would be in the city of Naples that pizza as we know it came into being. Founded around 600 BC as a Greek settlement, under the Bourbon kings of France, Naples became a booming center of international trade and drew a steady influx of peasants from the impoverished countryside seeking jobs. Its population ballooned from 200,000 in 1700 to nearly 400,000 in 1748. The closer to the bay, the denser the population, and the working class did most of their living outdoors, living in homes that included little more than a single room for an entire family. As the job market of Naples struggled to keep pace with the influx of people, an ever greater number of the city's inhabitants fell into poverty, and the worst off of these became known as the Lazzaroni, because their ragged appearance resembled that of Lazarus in the New Testament. Numbering about 50,000 or 1 in 8 Neapolitans, they scraped by on pittances earned as porters, messengers, or casual laborers. Always rushing here and there in search of work, they needed cheap and easy-to-eat food to sustain them through whatever job they worked. Pizza, or flatbreads with various toppings eaten for any meal and sold by street vendors who carried huge boxes under their arms, met this dire need. These toppings are often recognizable today. The simplest of these pizzas had nothing more than garlic, lard, and salt on them, though the better off could afford tomatoes, cheese, oil, garlic, and anchovies. Tomatoes imported from the Americas became more common. Of course, scientists at the time believed tomatoes to be mildly poisonous, since the tomato plant resembled the toxic nightshade plant. Of course, that meant the rich would not touch tomatoes, but they had no problem with the poor eating them. This led snobbish and judgmental Italian authors to label their Neapolitan neighbors' food and eating habits disgusting. In 1831, Samuel Morse, the American-born inventor of the telegraph, described Neapolitan pizza as a species of the most nauseating cake, covered over with slices of pomodoro or tomatoes, and sprinkled with little fish and black pepper, and I know not what other ingredients. It altogether looks like a piece of bread that has been taken reeking out of the sewer. When the first Italian cookbooks appeared during the late 1800s, they completely ignored pizza as unfit for their readers' attention. Yet in 1889, King Umberto I and Queen Margherita, the rulers of recently united Italy, visited Naples. Legend has it that the traveling family became bored with their steady diet of French haute cuisine and the long cooking times they required. So the Queen asked for an assortment of pizzas from the city's Pizzeria Brandi, founded more than 100 years earlier. Neapolitans called the type of pizza the Queen enjoyed most pizza mozzarella, a pie topped with soft white cheese, red tomatoes, and green basil. It is perhaps no coincidence that the Queen's favorite pie featured the three colors of the new Italian flag. From there, the story goes that topping combination became forever known as Pizza Margherita, and the blessing of Queen Margherita ensured that pizza would suddenly become much more popular among the Italian aristocracy both in Naples and across the kingdom. Yet it would be across the ocean that pizza started to become an international phenomenon. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, thousands upon thousands of Neapolitans left the extreme poverty of their home city for factory jobs in the United States. They joined a migration of millions of Europeans. These Neapolitans replicated their trusty, crusty pizzas in any city where they settled in great numbers. These cities included New York City, Trenton, New Haven, Boston, Chicago, and St. Louis. Relatively quickly, the flavors and aromas of pizza began to appear throughout Neapolitan neighborhoods. One of the first documented pizzerias in the United States became Lombardi's on Spring Street in Manhattan, licensed to sell pizza in 1905. Prior to that, cooks prepared the dish in their homes and unlicensed vendors sold it on the streets, vanishing if the police happened to show up. Lombardi's still in operation today, though no longer at its 1905 location, has the same oven that it had more than 100 years ago. 3 East Coast pizzerias continue to churn out pies in the century-old tradition, like Totano's in Coney Island, opened in 1924, Mario's on Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, opened 1919, and Pepe's of New Haven, opened in 1925. While these pizzerias were truly great, they still mainly served pizza to their fellow Italian Americans. It would be World War II that finally taught the world about pizza. During the Italian campaigns of 1943 and 1944, American and British soldiers fought their way up the Italian peninsula, liberating it from the rule of Mussolini's fascists. Throughout southern Italy, these American and British soldiers learned about delicious, creamy pizza and began asking for it wherever they went. That meant Italian cooks and restaurateurs had to hurriedly install pizza ovens in their restaurants so that they could cater to those United States and British service members. After the war ended, tourism became a lot more popular since travel became much cheaper thanks to the rapid growth of commercial airlines. The southern Mediterranean, like Italy, southern France, and even Tunisia, became popular as tourist destinations for British and French middle-class families. That meant Italian Restaurateurs had to cater to their tastes if they wanted some of those wonderful tourist dollars, and that meant yet more pizza ovens went into more Italian restaurants so that they could get those lovely tourist dollars. Back in the United States, Italian Americans and their food migrated from city to suburb and east to west during the great migrations that followed World War II. Pizza's popularity boomed. It was no longer seen as an ethnic food only eaten in the Little Italy scattered across the United States. Pizzerias began to open in suburbs across the country, wherever Italians settled. Regional and very non-Neapolitan variations began to emerge. These included California gourmet pizzas topped with barbecued chicken and smoked salmon, to deep, savory pies made in Texas that grew heavy with minced beef. Post-war pizza became incredibly popular around the world. Just like blue jeans and rock and roll, the rest of the world, including Italians, embraced Americanized pizza simply because it was American. And today, international outposts of American chains like Domino's and Pizza Hut thrive in 60 countries. Reflecting local tastes, pizza toppings can run the gamut from Gouda cheese in Curacao to shaved coconut in Costa Rica, banana curry and pineapple in Sweden, canned tuna and olives in Germany, and in Australia they serve pizza with emu meat, bush tomato, capsicum, and lemon myrtle mayo. No matter what your preference, there's a pizza for you no matter where you go. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.